Hello! Welcome to the first ever episode of the Joy Dunk Club. My name is Terry Park, and I'll be your host for tonight. I'm also the creator of the Joy Dunk Club. And just to talk a little bit about where the show came from, like many of you, I'm a big fan of Jeremy Lin, and I thought it'd be great to have a show where I can invite people who know a lot about Jeremy Lin, about basketball, to talk about all things Lin and Linsanity. So I feel lucky that I can have these four panelists with us today to talk about Jeremy Lin. Oh, and the name, the Joy Dunk Club, for those who don't know, it's a play off of the Joy Luck Club, the classic Asian American novel and film by Amy Chan.
Is that what it is?
You didn't know that? What did you think the name?
Wow.
Where did you think the name came from?
How original.
Thanks, Ren. Yes, extremely original. So, as most of you know, I'm assuming a lot of you have seen the movie or read the book. It's about a bunch of Asian American, Chinese American aunties who sit around a mahjong table and talk about how much their daughters disappoint them. So I got the idea to have us as the aunties, and we're gonna dissect Jeremy Lin's play, his progression over the year, and to talk about the larger cultural phenomenon of Linsanity. So we don't have any mahjong tables, but you guys are welcome to bring some if that makes you feel like a bigger part of the Toilet Club. Anyway, so we are going to start off. Oh, and this show is being hosted generously by CineVue, which is the online journal of Asian CineVision, and they're generous enough to offer 3 free shirts, T-shirts, from the New York Asian American International Film Festival to the best 3 ideas that you have for a tattoo for Jeremy Lin. So right now he's pretty naked, especially compared to Carlos Delfino and many other basketball players. So if you can think of a great tattoo that Jeremy Lin would love, please tweet it with the hashtag the Joy Dunk Club, or type it in onto the YouTube channel, and we'll pick 3 winners and we'll send them off to you. Okay, so first, before we jump into the show, I just want to do a quick recap for those who live under a rock and don't know who Jeremy Lin is. Jeremy Lin is our favorite Asian American basketball superstar. He currently plays point guard for the Houston Rockets. Last year, of course, he played for the Knicks, was benched for the first few weeks, was finally given a chance to play. Then Linsanity exploded, and he eventually got injured, unfortunately, missed the playoffs. But he definitely made his mark on not just the NBA, but on Asian American athletics, sports, etc. And then there was the whole controversy over the summer. He didn't sign with the Knicks. He wasn't given a contract by the Knicks, and was given a contract by the Rockets, a contract that the Knicks decided not to sign. So now he's with Houston, paired up with James Harden and the rest of the Rockets, who are doing really well this season. So now we're going to first tackle the game tonight against the LA Lakers and the Rockets. I think they were behind for the first part of the game. There's some static in the back. Does anyone else hear that? Okay, so okay, now it's gone. All right, we're gonna have some technical difficulties for this first show since we're still figuring things out. So bear with us. So the Lakers and the Rockets played tonight. The Rockets beat the Lakers 125 to 112. Jeremy Lin started slowly, but eventually picked up his game in the second half. He scored 19 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals. He shot 7 of 13, 2 for 6 on 3-pointers. He hit half of his free throws, 3 out of 6, and he had a whopping 7 turnovers. But the Rockets still won, and everybody saw the game tonight, right? So, what did you think of Jeremy Lin's play? Why do you think he started out slowly, Greg, but picked up his game in the second half? Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to do introductions. Okay, quickly. So Greg Kim is a recent graduate of Williams College and is a frequent sports tweeter. Currently resides in Boston and is a Knicks fan. Welcome to the show, Greg. Say hi, Greg.
Thanks, Terry. Glad to be here.
All right. Next, we have Joyce Yin. Joyce hails from Chicago and is the co-founder of the Chicago Bulls-centric blog Hard Hat Lunch Pail. Welcome to the show, Joyce. And next we have, that's cool. Next we have Keith Chow. Keith is currently in Baltimore, Maryland, is also a Bulls fan, like Joyce, and he is one of the editors of the Asian American Comics anthology, Secret Identities and Shattered. Welcome to the Joy Dunk Club, Keith.
Hey, there it is. I can't read it. I can't reach it. There it is. Somewhere.
There, you almost touched it. Good job. And last but not least, we have Ren Shea, currently living in Brooklyn, but hails from Houston. Is, of course, a Houston Rockets fan, and among the many, many, many things that he does, he is the co-host on Dat Winning, which is a sports podcast from an API point of view with Leonard Check and Duke Hogwild. Welcome to the show, Ren.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
No problem. And then quickly, I'm Terry. I'm the creator and the host of the Joy Dunk Club. I currently live in Oakland. I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah. Yes, there are Asians in Utah. And, of course, I'm a jazz fan.
Of course.
Of course, because we have nothing else to follow or do except snowboard. All right, so let's get back to the Lakers and the Rockets and Jeremy Lin's play tonight. Greg, you started off slow in the first half, picked it up in the second half. What was the difference between the two halves, Greg?
Well, I think the main thing you got to think about coming into this game, the Lakers have had a really challenging season, and they just got hit this week by news that Pau Gasol was going to be out with concussion, and Dwight Howard has some shoulder problems. So you could sort of tell coming in that the Lakers were going to play with a sense of desperation. And I think I didn't catch the whole first quarter, but I did. It's based on the stats, they came out firing, and I think Kevin McHale sort of had a short leash on Jeremy to begin with, and he was sort of looking for stuff that worked. And if you were watching the game, you noticed that Carlos Sofino was just lining up in the first half, like he was shooting lights out. So I think just going with the hot hand, which is something that's very typical for NBA coaches to do, is sort of why Jeremy didn't have a productive first half. But the second half, when the tempo really picked up, and the Rockets really pushing the pace, I think Jeremy sort of got into his groove, and a lot of the play really resembled sort of his success as a New York Knick last year in the height of insanity. He was running, he was going hard off of the pick and roll, going straight to the basket. He was starting to hit a couple threes, hit a couple where his foot was on the line, but all in all, second half was almost like we were back in New York last year.
Great. And Keith, I think you mentioned a few minutes ago before we went live that you saw the entire game. Was there anything specific that he was doing different in the second half, or was it more the Lakers' defense that changed, that allowed Lin to play a more up-tempo game, as Greg talked about?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we noticed if you watch the game is that the Lakers started off hot, but the Lakers aren't, even though Mike D'Antoni's their coach, they're not really accustomed to running and playing at an up-tempo speed. And I think in the beginning of the game, the Lakers, without Pau Gasol and without Dwight Howard, decided, we're really going to run Mike D'Antoni's offense. And for a while, they looked really good. And I think the legs just caught up with them in the second half. And you had players who played probably 5 minutes for an entire season, playing an entire game. Guys like Sakra, who was really hot in the beginning of the game, kind of cooled off defensively. And I think, like Greg mentioned, Lin was running the pick and roll really effectively. That third quarter, Lin and Harden were phenomenal. I think the NBA TV showed us that they combined for 22 points, 7 assists, and 10 rebounds alone in the third quarter, and that's when the game blew wide open.
Mm-hmm. And Ren, was tonight an indication of the budding chemistry between Jeremy Lin and James Harden? And if so, what's working for them now that maybe wasn't working before?
Tonight is as indicative as any other night that they've had on this streak. They've won 5 straight. They've been playing really well lately, and that's really because they've changed the offense. They made it an up-tempo, just sort of run and gun off. And they have the personnel to do it. And, you know, they're putting up a ton of points. Yeah, they're really just playing well all around because when you have a high-octane offense like this, yeah, everyone gets a touch. Everyone gets a chance. You know, everyone gets a chance to do their thing. So they look like they're flowing pretty well right now.
Yeah, definitely. And Joyce, so tonight, Jeremy Lin went up against one of the greatest point guards in the history of the NBA, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinions. Steve Nash. Chris Duhon, number 1, of course. Nate Robinson, number 2, for Joyce's hometown Bulls, and maybe number 18, Steve Nash. You know, he's lost a little bit of an edge in the past few years. But yeah, you know, a lot of people compare Jeremy Lin to Steve Nash, whether it's fair or not, and maybe you can answer that as well. Is there anything that you think Jeremy Lin can learn from Steve Nash?
I mean, yeah. I mean, so apologies before. I was not trying to be all silent and mysterious. I was on mute. So hello.
No worries. No worries.
But I think one is just, you know, let's put into context. I think everyone was hating on Jeremy before, and I looked at his minutes, and he's playing more minutes now than he did in his first two seasons combined. So there's a learning curve, right? And so with Steve Nash, I think what he can learn is, I think Steve Nash just has this incredible kind of court vision, right? Anticipating where players are going to be. And I think Jeremy can, that's one of the things that Jeremy can definitely learn from, but I'll just keep it there for now since we're on a time limit.
Okay. Yeah, great. We got to pick these things up. So, I mean, well, does anyone think that Jeremy Lin can be the three-point shooter that Steve Nash is? Or is there another player that we think could be Jeremy's ceiling? Or are there other strengths that Jeremy should focus on? You know, his court vision, his steals. Ren, you were shaking your head. Is there a better player that we can compare Jeremy Lin to, or a better model for Jeremy's ceiling?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is he's not a shooter. He didn't come into the league as a shooter. He runs pick and roll well. He has a knack of getting the basket, finishing around the basket. Steve Nash came into the league as a shooter. That has never been Jeremy Lin's rep. I actually see Stephen Curry more as you know, Steve Nash of the future type of player. He might even be better than Nash in the future at some point. But I think Jeremy Lin's more in the mold of a Jason Kidd. I mean, Kidd came into the league as one of the greatest and became one of the greatest playmakers of all time, and just runs the fast break better than anybody ever did. So maybe not quite at that level, but as far as are people going to leave him open for threes his entire career? Probably. And that's what they did to Jason Kidd, and Jason Kidd took that and became the third all-time three-point shooter in the NBA. So certainly he can be a better three-point shooter, and he can make teams pay for it. That's what Jason Kidd did. Jason Kidd came in the league not being able to hit a jump shot to save his life, and now he's the third all-time leading three-point shooter. And that's what Jeremy Lin could do.
Go ahead.
I was going to say I think the other thing about Jeremy Lin in comparison to someone like a Steve Nash or Jason Kidd is that those are two natural point guards, and I don't think Jeremy Lin is really a true one in the NBA. You know, he's a bit of a combo guard. That's the thing about the Harden-Lin backcourt, is that neither is a one or a two. They kind of play off of each other, and that's what you're starting to see how they're gelling. That you know, Harden can play point and Jeremy can play off the ball, and vice versa, and they can switch it up. Whereas Jason Kidd and Steve Nash are, you know, in the textbook kind of point guard. Jeremy Lin has recently said that he kind of sees himself as Tony Parker being someone that he can be like in the future as well. I see that as a role model for Jeremy's career in the NBA to mirror something like what Tony Parker's able to do.
Right, because Tony Parker came to the league kind of like Jason Kidd without knowing how to shoot or knowing how to shoot three-pointers, and eventually built up a solid jumper. But, I mean, I don't think Jeremy Lin is as quick as, I mean, Tony Parker is one of the quickest point guards to ever play the game. I heard
Jeremy's
on the
deceptively quick.
He's deceptively quick, which is something we'll get into a little bit later in terms of how Jeremy Lin has been racialized, especially early on in Linsanity. But I heard Clyde Drexler, one of the announcers, a few games ago, say that Jeremy Lin has one of the fastest quickest first steps in the NBA. But can we put him on par with a Tony Parker, or maybe, I don't know, is there another player that we haven't talked about? I think Keith, you mentioned he's more of a combo guard, which, I mean, to me, when I think of Jeremy Lin, I think of passing first. That he's a definite north-south guard, playing off of the pick and roll better than most other point guards. But Greg, is there another player that you can think of? Maybe is he more of a Russell Westbrook, Derrick Rose type, or do you see him as a classic Jason Kidd kind of point guard?
So I think for me is it's sort of very. I'm not really one to compare Jeremy to a lot of the other sort of superstar point guards of the day, because it's kind of very hard to classify him. I mean, Steve Nash is an obvious comparison just because they both ran that Mike D'Antoni system. They both ran a ton of pick and rolls. At the same time, Tony Parker's a great comparison because he's great at penetrating the rim. He's got a quick first step. And I think ultimately, I would look for Jeremy to sort of be his own player. I think you can see, because you can sort of see bits of everyone in him. Like you can see like the Jason Kidd in him. You can see the Steve, all the names that everyone mentioned. Like you can see parts of that in Jeremy's game. But the thing is, he's not really doing like all of those things at an elite level, but he's doing some of them. He's doing some of all of those things. So I mean, to me, I'd look for him to just sort of be his own man. I mean, tonight's stat sheet is like a perfect example of a Jeremy game, just because he got a couple threes, he got his usual amount, like 6+ assists. He got a bunch of rebounds tonight. You look at his game, he got to the rim plenty of times. He wasn't really hitting his free throws tonight, but he was getting to the foul line. So I mean, to me, I would look for Jeremy to just be Jeremy, to be honest. I mean, because he's not elite at necessarily one thing, but he's doing a whole bunch of things pretty well. I mean, maybe something will develop into an elite skill, but I mean, until then, I just look for him to be him and not worry about anyone else.
Especially us antis who just tear him apart every chance that we get and poke holes in every part of his game. And actually, I remember when he was asked which player he compares himself to, I think he said Goran Dragic of the Suns, which is an interesting comparison. He's not, a Tony Parker, Jason Kidd player. But, yeah, in any case, so we got to move on from the Lakers game to just his overall progression. And we've already touched upon it, his chemistry with James Harden. Joyce, what do you think it's possible for Jeremy Lin to truly blossom with James Harden, who is someone who demands the ball, who runs the pick and roll just as good, if not better than Jeremy Lin? Or would it serve Jeremy Lin better to be on a different team? I mean, I know it's early on still, but would it be better for him to be the man, which is what he thought he was going to be in the beginning of the season?
I mean, I almost still feel like it's way too early to tell, especially because Lin and Harden didn't even have a training camp together, right? So we really are only beginning to see the possibilities between the two of them. And so I almost feel like Jeremy needs to play alongside like a what would you say, like the man player, like he's in New York, right, where he had Melo. I think because he is kind of like a combo guard, like Keith was saying, he and Harden can play off of each other, right? So at some points, Harden can take the ball. Like tonight, he had more assists than Lin did, right? So he had 9 assists, right? Mm-hmm. Where Lin can then play off the ball and score. Or if Harden is having, or if Lin is having an off night, then he can give the ball to Harden, right? And Harden can score all those points. But he just really benefits from having a really good ball handler, because Jeremy, as we have noticed tonight with his 7 turnovers, is incredibly turnover prone. So I almost feel like I would want to feel this out first, and then, before I make any kind of judgment calls, if he needs to be on a different team.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the issue between James Harden and Jeremy Lin was really an issue in the beginning of the season when, we talked about Jeremy's slow start this year. and a lot of that had to do with adjusting to playing with someone like a James Harden. And if the last 15 to 20 games is any indication, they kind of figured it out. And I think the turnover thing about Jeremy Lin is kind of overblown. I looked at the stats before the show, and he's number 15 in the league in turnovers. James Harden is actually number 5 in terms of the number of turnovers per game. So Jeremy has this bad rap about being turnover prone, but if you look at who's on the list of the highest rates of turnovers in the NBA, you have players like Kyrie Irving, players like Kobe Bryant. Like I said, James Harden, his own teammate, is number 5 on that list. And what that tells me is if you average a lot of turnovers, that means you just handle the ball a lot. And so I think that, some of his turnovers are ugly turnovers, and I think that's why the perception is taken over the reality. But I think the turnover thing is overblown about Jeremy Lin.
Yeah, let's talk more about that, Ren. That's something that a lot of people last year when he was with the Knicks during the Linsanity run pointed at. When he was scoring 20, 30 points a game, dishing 10-plus assists, they were looking at his turnovers. Is that something that is a carryover from last year? Why does Jeremy Lin have this bad rep when he's not in the top 5 most turnovers in the league? Oh, Ren, you're muted. We can't hear you.
All right, Keith. Yeah. Sorry, Keith. I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, I think what it is, a lot of it is sort of just when you look at Lin as a player, there's that. Part of it is already the criticism of Lin anyway, because he had risen so high and during Insanity, and you just want to sort of nitpick on him. But the other part of it is, those guys that you mentioned are all, around 20-point scorers and around, 7, 8 assists, or they just produce a lot more numbers. So you're looking at Lin, who's about 12.1 points a game, so like 6 assists. He doesn't put up as high numbers, but his turnovers are within the top 15. And if you were to ask if he was one of the top 15 players in the league, I think you would struggle to find a lot of people who thought that. So I think that's where the criticism comes from. Certainly he's a player who's learning to play the game, and point guards generally average more turnovers than more other players anyway. And there's a learning curve to it, and he's just making very specific mistakes that if he cuts those out, he can really diminish a lot of those turnovers.
You saw that tonight. There were a few times where he would drive through the lane and not know what to do.
Not have anything to do. Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Now, Greg, you're a Knicks fan. You're from New York, and you mentioned in our practice show that you're a big fan of D'Antoni's offense. Do you think Lin is a better player in D'Antoni's offense or in McHale's offense?
Well, so it's kind of tough to say he's better in one or the other, because McHale's doing a lot of the things that D'Antoni did. If you look at Houston, their rate of play, like the pace of their game, they're just pushing the ball off the court. They're running tons of pick and rolls, and that's like the staple of what Mike D'Antoni did with the Knicks during the middle of Insanity. If you look at the court, the players that Jeremy's playing with, you've guys like Chandler Parsons, Carlos Delfino, and of course James Harden. So he has a lot of liberty to just keep doing the things that he does best, like use the pick and roll, get to the rim, or get into the paint and look to dish to a 3-point shooter. So I think the biggest struggle for him, as we've touched on already, was just sort of getting used to playing with James Harden, and of course Kevin McHale was out for a decent part of the early season, so they didn't have a head coach. So I think it's tough to it's tough to say like one over the other, just because the two offenses are so similar, and sort of the nuances of the situation have been so different. But they both play to its strengths for sure, both the offenses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Kyle Lowry and Dragic flourished last year under McHale's offense, so it's no wonder that we have Lin and Harden doing well too. So we have about 5 minutes left in the show, so I want to move on to talking about the larger cultural phenomenon that is, I think you can see that shirt, Litsanity.
Oh my god.
Unfortunately, I think this is like a vintage T-shirt now, since it's a Knicks shirt. So someone mentioned before the famous phrase that has come to be associated with Jeremy Lin, which is deceptively quick. I forgot exactly who first uttered those famous words. I think it was a Knicks broadcaster, maybe Walt Clyde Frazier. But Joyce, let's focus or unpack those two words, deceptively quick. I mean, is that just an innocent description of Jeremy Lin's play, especially when not too many people saw him play? And as you mentioned, he didn't get that many minutes his first year with Golden State, and then suddenly he's given a lot of minutes and has this huge spotlight. Or are there racial undertones to that description and other descriptions of Jeremy Lin?
I mean, the cynical side of me wants to say, like, yeah, there's totally racial undertones in basketball in general, right? Just like when you hear announcers talking about how, you know, a lot of black players are just so naturally athletic and gifted, right? Whereas white players, right, they scrap hard and they work hard, and, you know, that's how they get into the league, right? So that part of me wants to say, yeah, deceptively quick. Like, I don't think so. Why can't you just say, yeah, he's just really speedy, he's really fast? Why does there need to be this kind of racially charged word associated with it that has been used to against AAPI communities in the past? So that's just my perspective. But I don't know what others think.
I actually didn't know that was that's how the Asian American community felt about that terminology. I think that if you look at Jeremy Lin, you would say he's not that quick. And then when you're looking at him scoring a layup on you, you would say, hey, he's kind of deceptively quick. You know what I mean? It's kind of one of those things. It's like you would look at the kid and he doesn't look explosive. He's not like muscular. He's not ripped. He doesn't look like Eric Bledsoe or LeBron James. He doesn't look powerful and explosive. So I would not look at Jeremy Lin and say, well, he's got to be quick. You know what I'm saying? So for somebody to say he was deceptively quick, yeah, that's what I see too. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a small, pint-sized point guard like a Nate Robinson. Right. He's 6'3", he's 200, 210 pounds. You know, he's a big guy for a point guard.
And then there have been plenty of you know, black players that have been called deceptively quick too. I wouldn't put it on the fact that he was Asian or even just like lighter skinned. Yeah, no, I never felt that. I never saw that myself.
I don't know. I just feel like the word deceptive has been used against Asians before, and it's been used about like.
Yes, it has.
So
of course,
that's
but
why,
no, I know, but it's not transferable to everything.
Like, no, but I feel like it is in this situation. So I'm just like, find another word to use. There are a bajillion other words that you can use. Why use deceptive?
Well, okay, so if you're well, no, okay, so let's think of one. I would like to think of one.
All right, so think of one.
Yeah, how would you describe him? Oh, okay, that's a good idea. Let's all pick one adjective to describe Jeremy Lin's play. If not deceptive, what would you choose? That's not racially charged.
Well, would you call, like, say if I said he was surprisingly quick? Is that doesn't that sound condescending though? I think deceptively quick actually gives him a kind of edge. You know, it's a little, to me it sounds better than like, wow, he surprised the shit out of me. I did not know he could do that, which is kind of condescending to me. But you know, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying.
Well, I think
it could have been worse. People could have said he's like a ninja with a basketball.
He's like a ninja. Yeah, he's a ninja with the ball, man.
Which gives him an edge. I mean, he's literally not seen. And I think I've heard that defenders, you know, players said that we're not used to seeing an Asian guy with the ball. You know, he's not Yao Ming. He's not 7 foot tall. He's not Wang Zhu.
No.
He's 6'3", running the pick and roll.
He's got that kung fu quickness.
He's got the kung fu quick. He's got the kung fu grip.
But to
Invisible Man 2.
I think we've lost some of our panelists. But I think, to kind of get Joyce's back a little bit. I mean, I think what the issue is, it's not just the terminology of deceptively quick, right? It's the context of where that came from during Linsanity. Because you know this has been beaten like a dead horse, but the whole notion of why Linsanity blew up last year was seeing this athletic Asian American NBA player, right? Like, because you guys mentioned the paragon of what an Asian basketball player was supposed to be is, you know, this lumbering, towering, you know, 7 foot kind of slow robotic player,
but
right?
that's because that's all there was. That's all there was.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
know?
So Jeremy Lin broke the mold in that sense.
Right,
And,
but
I think it was the commentators took them a while to get used to seeing a smaller, athletic Asian basketball player, and that's where.
But Keith, you would admit that Jeremy Lin would not be considered an exceptional athlete in the NBA.
Not in you're right. I mean, relative to other NBA players, you're right. But But it also doesn't mean that he's not an athletic player, right? And I think
they're all athletes. They're all athletes.
Right.
Well, I mean, I think part of what feeds into the whole deceptively quick thing is that his first step is up there, for NBA players, whereas the rest of his sort of skill set isn't necessarily. So, I mean, I think that's at least part of it, if you sort of want to get into the details of that.
Yeah. Or maybe it has nothing to do with his race. Maybe it has more to do with him being from Harvard and there being no Harvard NBA players or anyone from the Ivies. So maybe he's deceptive because he's not from a Division I school.
That's a reach. That's a reach.
I know. I don't even.
You're Skip Baylessing us right now.
Yeah, I know, right? Because it's difficult to decouple that, right? Because that's what people were saying last year. It's like, oh no, it's not a story because he's Asian. It's a story because he's this Harvard kid and all.
No, nobody.
You cannot. Yeah,
nobody
exactly. No one he was a story because he was an Asian American basketball player. That's why he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. That's why Linsanity. And because we've talked about this before, that plus the fact that this happened in New York City, it was the perfect storm. You had an Asian American, Harvard played a role, but to say that he's a story because he went to Harvard, that's BS. He's an Asian American kid. What it said about the racialized perspective of sports is what drove the story. Chink in the Armor was a story. Because of Jeremy Lin, you know what I'm saying?
Because if you said that about any other ball player, it wouldn't have made it. It wouldn't have made a difference. And then and the truth is the reason why that has so much play. What Keith's saying rings so true is because anyone who plays basketball, if you play recreationally, whatever you played in high school, college, how you were received as a player if you're Asian. You know what I mean? Like, that's why it was such and everyone knows, like, people know that. People in sports, they all know it, is that Asians aren't supposed to know how to play this game. Asians aren't supposed to play the game the way that Jeremy Lin played it. It's one thing if you're 7'6", like Yao Ming, okay. If you're 7'6", okay, you should be able to play basketball. But, the way Jeremy Lin played it, nobody had ever expected an Asian kid to play like that. That's why it was news.
See, because Jeremy played with swag. That was the difference. Like, the thing about Yao Ming and Wang Zhizhu, like, Yao Ming had dominant games. He would have, like, 30 points and 10 rebound games, and he had that classic trash talk to Chris Kaman, you can't effing stop me and all that, right?
Right.
But that was few and far between, right?
Yeah.
But Jeremy, like the height of Linsanity, he had that swag in Toronto. He had that swag coming back on hitting a three and like winking at the camera.
Yeah.
You didn't see Asian Americans play like that.
And that's a very American thing. It's a very American thing. This appreciation of the swagger.
And I think that's a question. We don't have enough time. We're going to have to wrap it up pretty soon. But for the next episode, that difference between an Asian American player like Jeremy Lin and what some people would call an import, like Yao Ming or Wang Zhizhu or Yijian Lin. And what about Dat Nguyen, the Dallas Cowboys Vietnamese American linebacker for the Cowboys? I think he won the best defensive lineman trophy at Texas A&M during college. Was that not a perfect storm? What were the set of conditions that allowed Linsanity to happen, but not Winsanity?
In basketball, you're exposed. In football, you're wearing a helmet, you're wearing pads. It doesn't matter what you look like. Everyone looks the same on a football field.
Right.
Basketball, you're wearing a tank top and shorts. Everyone can see you, and that's why it's important culturally to see an Asian American basketball player. Because even baseball, you've seen a string of Asian baseball players. That Ichiro is probably the biggest sensation in the Major League Baseball, but still, it wasn't. You're still you're wearing a helmet and you're wearing. You're not exposed like you are in the NBA, and I think
it's just more of a team game, and the NBA is more of an individual. Yeah. I mean, it's team game too, but individuals can shine in that kind of way.
Well, I think it's interesting that Keith has said that he's exposed, that Jeremy Lin is exposed to the NBA, but Ren said before that he's a ninja. Invisible and hiding, swooping through, the court.
Yeah.
But, hey,
I think Ren was trolling, Terry.
I know, and I took the bait. Gladly. So, hey, we actually have some questions from our audience. So I'm going to throw this one at Greg. Greg, you get this one because you're a D'Antoni fan. So someone asked the question, would Jeremy Lin have worked with the Knicks this season, especially now that Raymond Felton is injured? What do you think about that, Greg?
So I mean, when Jeremy wasn't re-signed, when the Knicks didn't, match the offer sheet, I was furious. I've been a huge Knicks fan like since Marbury joined the team. So my last 10 years have been a living hell.
Marbury.
You're a Marbury fan?
No, I'm not a Marbury fan, but since he joined the team. But so it's like, I mean, I pretty much like resolved to stop being a Knicks fan. So that's why I like to say like I'm a Knicks fan in exile this year. But I mean, to the Knicks' credit this season, and one of my friends from college and high school told me this, and I completely agree with him. Raymond Felton was the better point guard for this Knicks team. Considering, Carmelo's already there, the ego's in place, J.R. Smith, you could tell, like, from when the Rockets had their offer sheet that there was just resentment from the Knicks team. I mean, the Knicks have been really gelling this season, and, I think Raymond was sort of the right guy to sort of get along with the egos of that team. And I think, honestly, Jason Kidd has been absolutely huge for the Knicks. So, I mean, part of me is kind of like, I would really like to see what Jason Kidd could have done for Jeremy Lin if he was mentoring him. I really, I truly think that the Knicks could have been this good last season. I kind of blame it on Melo that they weren't. But all in all, I think all's well that ends well. And I think, Jeremy in Houston with James Harden and Raymond Felton with the Knicks is ultimately, despite how pissed off I was over the summer, I was really pissed. I think ultimately it ended for the best.
I don't think you're the only one who was pissed. And, I mean, I know it's not going to happen this year.
I wasn't upset. I was not upset.
Were you happy for Jeremy?
Yeah, because, well, I know Ren was happy because he's from Houston. But, being a long time, I've been a Bulls fan for over 25 years. And to have to root for the Knicks last year was the most painful 2 weeks of my life. I would catch myself at the end of a game and when I cheer at the Toronto game, I was like, oh, crap, that's right, it's the Knicks. So the fact that he left the Knicks and pissed off so many Knicks fans, it was like heaven to me. I like that a lot.
What about you, Joyce? You're also a Bulls fan. Was it hard for you or did you cheer just for Jeremy Lin but against the Knicks? Or was it for both?
Oh, yeah. No, let's be clear. Love Jeremy Lin. Hate the Knicks forever. So the fact that he went to the Rockets was fabulous. No, and also, like, I mean, I think, when he got that offer sheet, right, like, I mean, clearly, I think, I just thought it was very interesting that Melo decided to call out Lin, right? Like, like, players do not do that to each other, ever, right? Even if they get the most ridiculous offer, and you think it's ridiculous, you don't call out another player. Right, but Melo just thought it was okay to be like, wow, Lin, what's this offer sheet? That was some bullshit right there. And I'm like, Lin, you do not need to be in that drama. You need to go.
Go to Houston. Go west.
We probably don't have time for this, but I think that's sort of like the foundation for a very interesting argument about race, how race sort of played into the situation.
Yeah. I think that specific incident between Melo and Lin should be explored in the next episode. We have one more question from the audience. Joyce, I want to field this to you. Someone asked, better bromance, Lynn Fields or Lynn Parsons?
Which
one?
Definitely Lynn Parsons.
Yeah.
Oh,
come on now.
So great. But
don't
I
you miss
love
the Bible
handshake and the glasses. And
the glasses.
It was
that was all a bit much. All a bit much for me.
No, that's OG Lynn bromance, okay? Like,
OG
Lynn. They're just trying to recreate the magic between Landry and Jeremy. That's all I gotta say.
Plus, Landry Fields had the couch that Lynn slept on. They had sleepovers.
That's true. There is the infamous couch, so there is always that. They'll always have the couch. Never forget the couch.
Chandler Parsons
backcourt in the NBA.
Chandler Parsons is so dreamy, though. I don't know.
He looked like he stepped out of a WB show. Wasn't he in a WB show? He was in One Tree Hill.
Right. He looks like he was on One Tree Hill. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like Chad Johnson, whatever his name was.
He's the Zoolander.
Chad.
They call him the Zoolander. The Rockets players call him the Zoolander.
Oh, because you got the blue steel look.
Yeah. I actually think he looks like one of those John Hughes bad guys, you know, like in
from the
16 Candles from the 80s, who was always driving the Porsche. You know what I mean? He'd show up at the private school, and he was always like the most popular guy, but he was kind of a douche too. So you know, that's what he looks like to me.
Then going in with the John Hughes analogy, then Jeremy Lin would be Long Duck Dong.
No.
No, he's
there?
He's not a bit player, though.
Oh,
He's not a bit player. He's more like Molly Ringwald, you know what I mean?
Team Landry, that's it.
He's going to the prom. He's going to the prom. And he's going with Chandler Parsons. You see?
You guys just hang on.
Nice.
You guys hang on. I'm Team Landry.
One for Landry. Well, but what about the beard and Lin? I thought this was all about beard sanity.
Yeah, the beard is the guy that was overlooked in the John Hughes movie. Who's the true love? You know what I mean? Like that's the part. We've taken this too far.
This is devolving quickly.
The beard is the beard.
If you see, you should check out ESPN Magazine's video interview of Jeremy Lin and James Harden. That's adorable.
It's adorbs.
They are adorable.
It is adorbs.
They're actually the reason why it works is because both of them are nerds. Both of them are the biggest dorks, and if you actually listen to them trying to be cool on screen, it's hilarious. And they work well together. And Parsons seems to be too. He's not as slick as he may seem to be. They all seem like a bunch of dorks.
Yeah, no, Parsons looked like he's straight out of Orange County. I think it's a different, a different level. So on that note, we've about wrapped it up, and we got a lot more to talk about, and we'll save that for the next episode, which will be Friday, again, after the Celtics-Rockets game. It'll be about half an hour after the end of the game, so I forgot what time it's at. Does anybody know when the Celtics-Rockets game is this Friday?
Probably at 7:30 or 8, right?
Yeah.
7:30. So it'll probably start around 10:30 because we started 3 hours after tonight's tip-off. So look for the next episode, episode 2 of the Joy Dunk Club.
Attack of the Clones.
Attack of the Clones. Yes.
You're such a nerd. You're such a nerd.
And speaking of nerds, speaking of nerdy comment, yeah.
By Shattered.
Yeah. Oh, right. Well, that makes sense. The comic book guy.
The game's at 7:30.
Who won't be with us, unfortunately, for the next game, but we'll have another panelist with us, Tim Yu, professor of Asian American Studies at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So tune in on Friday. The rest of us will be there, and we'll talk more Jeremy Lin on the Joy Dunk Club. Thanks, everyone.